Hi everyone, thanks for checking in today. It's Adam Coburn here at Low & Co Realty, and we're looking at the Wellington real estate market in the month of October versus a year ago and 2 years ago, and trying to pick out the trends and what's really happening according to the facts, not the hyperbole. So in summary, folks, Wellington values have been rising gently over the last few months. Message for sellers: things have gotten a little better than earlier in 2024 in particular. And the message to buyers: there is still a ton of choice out there, so get in amongst it. Let's look at the detail. Median sale price, $795,000 in October 2024 versus $790 a year ago. Barely moved, hardly statistically significant, but up 1%. If you look at the trend there, you see the red line. It's been going broadly horizontal since about July 2022. So for over 2 years ago, median sale prices have been roughly stable. If you follow these videos, you'll know I don't pay too much attention to the median sale price because it reflects not just the underlying values, but also the mix of properties sold in that month. And of course, what homeowners and house buyers are more interested in is what is happening to the underlying values of real estate. Best guide to that is the Real Estate Institute House Price Index. So let's have a look at that. Let's start with the league tables here. You can see there that Wellington has still fallen further than anywhere else in the country since the peak of the market in late 2021. So 24% down compared to October 2021. Auckland down 21.3%, nationwide on average 15.4%. So yeah, Wellington still has the auspicious privilege of leading that league table, if you like, with the biggest drop. We have seen a drop over the last 12 months. At 2% down compared to a year ago, but not as much of a drop as we saw in other parts of the country, including Auckland, which saw a 3% drop. And over the last 3 months in particular, we've seen gentle recovery at 1.3% up in Wellington over the last 3 months, and that's kind of middle of the pack, quite typical compared to the country overall, which saw a 1.5% increase. Let's look at the various, let's home in on Wellington in particular. So over the last 3 months, as you can see in the shape of the graph there, the orange line in particular, you can see the 3-month result has come up above zero. So we've seen some decent recovery over the last 3 months after really some quite challenging times and some softening values since the election, so late 2023 and earlier in 2024. So that's welcome relief for those of you who are looking to sell, or indeed the homeowners out there. A small recovery in the market over the last 3 months in terms of underlying values. Over the last 12 months, we've seen varying degrees of weakness across the different territorial authorities. Upper Hutt City dropped 4.9%, Wellington City 3.7%, whereas Porirua City barely down at all at 0.7%. I mean, obviously these numbers, the smaller the data sizes, the more the numbers bounce around a bit, but nonetheless, over the last year, all the territorial authorities have dropped by varying amounts. Over the last 3 months, in particular, you see there that Wellington City and Lower Hutt City have recovered. It would seem better than the other territorial authorities. And focusing in on Wellington City, you see there that 0.5% improvement over the month and 1.9% over the last 3 months. Clearly, you can see from the shape of the graph there, it's way more volatile, more ups, more downs, more of a sawtooth pattern, but you can see the trend being, you will see larger increases and deeper troughs, and no exception here. Over the last 3 months between August and October, we have seen some decent recovery in Wellington City, so some welcome relief for owners and vendors after a pretty rough sort of 9 or 10 months or so. Let's look now at the number of new listings coming on. So 783 in October versus 634 a year ago and 618 2 years ago. So it's a big improvement, a big increase in the amount of stock coming to the market in October versus 1 and 2 years ago. So it seems vendors perhaps seen some confidence over the last few months returning to the market, bringing more properties to the market. You see in the shape of the graph there, quite a big increase. Obviously, October seasonally is typically quite a big month, but that is quite a big increase and certainly a significant chunk over what we saw 1 and 2 years ago in the various Octobers. Even when compared to what's typical in October, we're seeing a little more in the month of October than we've seen typically in October. And certainly, as I said before, a decent increase over what we saw 12 and 24 months ago. In terms of the number of sales taking place, so we saw quite strong sale volumes in October, 662 versus 493 a year ago and 610 2 years ago. So it's an increase over both a year ago and 2 years ago. Big increase on October 2023, only a modest increase over 2022. And although we've seen quite strong sales results, we're still not quite matching the normal level of October sales of 696 over the last 10 years or so. Nonetheless, at 662, it was still a big increase over what we saw in October 2023. How long is it taking to sell? 41 days in October versus 37 days, so a bit of an increase there compared to a year ago, but versus 49 days 2 years ago, so certainly a lot shorter than then. The normal October result is about 32 days, so at 41 days, still longer than what's normal, although shorter duration to sell compared to the 4 months previous. How much supply have we got on the market in terms of inventory? This is how many weeks would it take to sell everything that's on the market today if everything carried on selling at the same rate and nothing came on the market at all. 16 weeks worth of supply in October versus 11 a year ago and 16 2 years ago. So obviously exactly the same as we saw 2 years ago. A significant increase on the amount of inventory compared to a year ago. The long-term average is 15, so it's 16 weeks, ever so slightly longer than the long-term average, but compared to over the last 9 or 10 years or so, it's been an average of 10 weeks. So compared to recent memory, the current inventory of 16 weeks feels like a tougher market than we've seen on average over the last 10 weeks by that measure. Looking now at the number of listings on TradeMe, 2989 as of a day or two ago versus a year ago, 2237. So a big increase on a year ago, and versus 2 years ago, 2735. So a modest increase there. If you look again at the shape of the graph there, you can see that, as is typically the case in spring heading into summer, we're seeing big increases as we head from August to September to October. No different this time round rather. But interestingly, look at that blue chart there. You'll see that very rarely have we seen this much stock. We saw it sort of 8 or 9 months ago, and we saw it back in early 2022, just after we reached the peak. So broadly speaking, this is the most we've seen on the market for some time. We have to go way back to early 2015 before we see more supply on the market than we are seeing today. So that's great news for those of you buyers out there. It means there is a ton of choice out there compared to what we saw for a very long time between sort of late 2015 and 2021. So great news for buyers. So in summary, folks, Wellington values have improved slightly since August. New listing volumes are up versus the same month a year and 2 years ago, and also up versus a month ago in September. Sales volumes are also up. Duration to sell is up versus this time last year, but down recently, which is encouraging for sellers compared to the last 2, 3, 4 months. Inventory levels are up, but up to normal levels by long-term trends. TradeMe listings also are up versus 12 months ago, and of course up recently, as is seasonally typical. So as I said earlier, sellers, message for you is the values have been gently improving. The market is certainly better now than it was in earlier 2024 and late 2023. And the message to buyers, there is a ton of choice out there. Get amongst it. In my opinion, we are bumping along the bottom in terms of the values, so it's still a great time to be buying. And as usual, thanks to Real Estate Institute and realestate.co.nz for the data. If you're wanting individual advice, please reach out to me. You know how to get me. It's Adam here at Low & Co. Thanks for checking in. See you next month.